Hey, it's Luca from EDMProd. So today's all about workflow. As music producers, we actually have to spend a lot of time producing tracks to actually develop our skills. So why not work in the most efficient way possible? I'm going to be discussing some of my most essential workflow ideas, how they can save you time and allow more space for creativity, because that's what it's all about, right? If you're like me and you like free sample packs and presets, the EDMProd website definitely has you covered, so don't forget to check that one out too. So this video is going to start off with some more beginner, intermediate understanding stuff and some really important shortcuts that I use every day. And then as it gets on, it's going to get more and more advanced. So if there is anything that you are particularly lacking in or just want to know how to do a workflow for a mixdown, for example, everything's timestamped below, so you can check that one out as well. So first of all, shortcuts that I can't live without. My favorite ones, in no particular order of preference, but perhaps one that I use every day, and it's so good to understand how and what it actually is doing, is Shift Tab. Shift Tab, Shift Tab, Shift Tab. So Shift Tab in Ableton, when you click on a track that has a MIDI track, for example, that has MIDI notes in it, you've got the device view down here. And when I click Shift Tab, that opens up the piano roll. So what's it actually doing though? It's actually important to understand what Shift Tab is doing rather than just, okay, Shift Tab between piano roll and device view. If you look down here, this is the device view here, and here's the piano roll. And so Shift Tab is just swapping between these two things. It took me a long time to actually figure out what this was doing. So if you already know this, then you're well ahead of where I was a few years into my production journey. So Shift Tab on MIDI tracks, you can also Shift Tab on audio tracks, and that just brings up the audio clip selector view as well. So yeah, Shift Tab, great one. Let's move on. So the next shortcut is Command G. Command G is really useful in so many different cases, all for grouping things. So I've made a group here, and I did that by clicking Command G. So I'm going to highlight a whole bunch of tracks. I can group tracks together. And this allows us to process them together, to send groups to effects, and for general organization. Also, if I right click on the group, I can assign the track color of the group to all the tracks within it and all the clips within it. So now all of these are the same color, which is super handy. A great thing about Ableton groups that I absolutely love is that if you're within a group, let's say this one, and I make a new track, it automatically colors the track to that group, which is so handy to keep everything together. And then now I just need to rename it, which takes half a second. Command G doesn't just group tracks together though, it also groups audio effects and instruments as well. So I'm gonna select this track. So I've got these audio effects here. And if I hit Command G on these audio effects, it groups them into an audio effect rack. And audio effect racks are super handy in Ableton because we can, for example, turn everything off and on at the same time. We can save these audio effects. We can also show the chains. And this is one of the most useful techniques that I use all the time, is the chain selector. So now that I've showed the chains, I can just go into my audio effects and get like an effect that I want to use in parallel. So process in parallel, and I can just drag it on here, some overdrive. Maybe I want some echo as well. So I'm just going to drag that on here as well. And now I can set the dry wet to 100. Maybe I want some reverb too. So I'm going to look for some reverb wherever it is. And last but not least, I'm going to put on an EQ on there as well, EQ 8. And now I've got this big effect chain, some reverb, and I'm going to make the EQ curve like this. And now the echo is going to be filtered and reverbed, as well as providing some overdrive here as well. And I'm just going to mix these into taste and see how that goes. So using Command G and chains as a processing tool is super useful. We also have access to macros in here now as well. So I can assign anything that I want to macros and just get tweaking and start like randomizing as well. And then adding macro variations, and it just audio effect racks and instrument racks just allow us so much more creative potential just by the use of a Command G. So when it comes to instruments, if I was to go into something like this 909 hat, if I hit Command G, now I can pull up the instrument rack section, and it's great for layering as well. So I've got this hat here. Let's say I want a little bit more tail and body to it. So let's pull up another hat, and now bringing this into the instrument rack, whenever this MIDI note plays, it plays both of them at the same time. It's just a great way to layer sounds. You don't have to do it just with hats. You can do whatever you want. There's so much potential to this, so go crazy with grouping things and layering. So the next one is a super handy one as well. If you don't already know this, you definitely should. It's Command R to rename tracks. So I accidentally just made a new track then with Command T, but Command R, rename, and then let's say I've renamed this one and I want to rename this one. All I need to do is hit tab, and it just goes down the list, and so I can rename them all at the same time. And if you use that in conjunction with the groups, everything's in the same color, and then you rename everything really quickly, you can just stay organized on the fly, and it makes producing a lot more efficient and just easier to think about, really, at least for me. Next is the Command Option series of shortcuts, and this just helps you declutter the Ableton session and just focus on what you want. So if you hold Command Option, now it's just going to be showing and hiding a whole bunch of panels that can come up and down. So Command Option B is the browser. Command Option L is the lower panel, I like to call it, but it's the device panel. And then you can hold Command Option and actually hit multiple letters at the same time, and it still works as well. We also have I for the inserts on the side. We have O for the overview at the top. We have M for the mixer. And most of the things that we can trigger, they all have their own one. We have R as well, Command Option R, and we can find all these in the top here in the view panel. So unfortunately, track delay doesn't have one, which is kind of annoying, but mixer, return tracks, sends, ins and outs, overview, they all have their own one. So the Command Option series is really nice for me to just be able to go like this. And now I can focus on here. And maybe I just want to pull up my browser to search something, or my devices to tweak something. While we're on the Command Option train as well, I don't personally use this one, but it might be useful depending on how you work. If you hold Command Option, you'll see the mouse will turn into a little hand icon, and you can actually drag around. It's nice for dragging up and dragging diagonally as well. This is kind of nice way of moving around. But I personally just like using this dude up here. So really handy for dragging diagonally. So the next one is turning off the grid temporarily. How we do this is by holding Command. And what I mean by this is when you drag your mouse around, let's say I'm highlighting a particular section. This also works in the MIDI editor as well. If I hold Command, it'll make it smooth and it will turn the grid off. You'll see the lines, the grid lines, they become dotted lines. This is really handy for things like chopping loops, because often the loops aren't in tempo with your track. So they're not on the grid lines, right? If I just zoom in here, let's say I want to chop out this transient. If I clip anywhere before then and hold Command, I can just get right before that transient, hit delete, and then go the same way, and then just hold Command and just delete. And now I've got this, and I can put that on my grid, or I can put it wherever I want. Also great for things like swinging. If I know that the swing sort of spot is right here and I want to take it off the grid, let's just hold Command and nudge it to the right a bit. So while I'm on this topic of learning the grid, it's also really, really handy to know the shortcuts which control how the grid changes. So if I right click, you can see all of the different options with the grid that we can have, having narrow, having narrowest, medium, 16ths. What I use mostly is turning the grid off and on, and that is Command 4. That turns it off. So now I can just chop freely if I like, just go like this and drag that out and just drag this section out. It's really easy to move around when the grid is off. If I hit Command 1 and 2, this cycles between the bigger and the smaller grid variation sizes. So if I hit Command 2, it's actually going to go bigger to medium. If I hit Command 2 again, it's going to go even bigger again. It's going to keep cycling through this. If I hit Command 1, it'll get smaller and smaller. Command 3 is the triplet grid. This is not something that I use often, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. So another one that I use a lot is Command 5, and this actually swaps between the fixed grid and the adaptive grid. So I'm in 16ths now, and now I'm in narrowest, and let's hit Command 5 again. I'm back in 16ths. So why this is really useful for me is I actually use 16ths a lot, and being in 16th note grid is really useful. And I also like the narrow setting of the adaptive grid. And this is sort of when it comes into sequencing keyboard shortcuts as well. So I'm in 16ths, right? I zoom out, I'm still in 16ths, everything is really small. But if I hit Command 5 to change over the adaptive grid, and then hit Command 2, and then hit Command 2 again, now I'll be in the narrow adaptive grid setting. So it's that Command 5, Command 2. So it's just 5, 2, 2 whilst holding Command, and I'm in from the 16ths to my adaptive narrow setting, which is changing as I'm moving around, which is really, really useful to know. Now, it wouldn't be a shortcut section if I didn't talk about time-based shortcuts. So let's talk a little bit about, how we can move time around in Ableton's arrangement view. So what do we mean by moving time? Let's say I want to double this whole section in length. All I need to do is hold Shift Command D, and it will duplicate the time and nudge everything over. So undoing, you can see that everything is being duplicated and moving over. This is different to Command D because then it would just overlap the next section. This is also really good for things like extending builds, for example. There's a whole bunch of other time-based shortcuts as well. So let's say I want to copy this section with just Command C and then paste it over here. Shift Command V will paste and nudge everything over. Let's say I want to cut everything. Shift Command X is going to cut and collapse everything in. And so the combination of these three different shortcuts, you can really do a lot of stuff with it. Let's say I want to copy this here and paste it here. And then I want to duplicate this section, Shift Command D, nudge everything over. I don't end up liking that, but so I want to cut this section out. There's a lot of different ways in which we can use these shortcuts to arrange, and it's just really useful to know. So get familiar with these ones and it will save you a lot of time. So the last one is a lot more flexible and broad, but it's called key mapping. So if I hit Command K, then you'll see that everything lights up in an orange sort of tinge over it. And there's this key section over here in the browser. So whenever I click something, if I hit a key, it will map this key to whatever this thing is doing. So while the track's in the loop phase, I actually like to set my key mapping onto these different track mutes here. So let's set the 2 on my keypad to the drums. Let's set the 1 to the kick drum. And let's set the 3 to the bass and the 4 to the chops. And let's just let's just pretend that this is in the loop stage at the time being. Before I go into my arrangement, what I'll do is I'll just sort of jam out on my keyboard and toggle the kick on and off and the drums on and off, and I'll take the bass out, and I'll bring the chops and the synths in, and I'll sort of play with the arrangement and sort of perform the arrangement a little bit, just to get a feel for how things sit and what things introduce well and what things should be introduced together. And it just gives me a bit more of a hands-on approach. So this next section of workflow tips is going to be about saving defaults. There's no point repeating the same actions over and over. So if you can save defaults which allow you to not repeat things so much, then that is a really good outcome. So if I hit Shift Command T to make a new MIDI track, you can actually see that I've got my simpler nested within an instrument rack, and I've got my chain selector open so that I can layer drums from the get-go. I use this a lot to layer drums, so it's really handy for me to have this already ready to go in an instrument rack. To save default tracks, all you need to do is customize your track. So let's say I wanted an auto filter for some reason on my MIDI track. All I need to do is right-click now and save as default MIDI track, and then it'll ask you if you want to override it. No, I don't, because I don't need an auto filter on my MIDI tracks. But that's the concept. So the next thing we can save defaults for is devices. EQ8, it's so handy to have a really personalized default EQ8 setup. So what I've done in this case is I've actually got these 4 bands loaded up, and I've customized each band to be at a frequency that I use a lot. So I've moved this band over to 100 Hertz, and I've moved this one to 300 Hertz, and I've moved this one to 1.5, because this sort of allows me to boost in this range, or like move it down to 1K or maybe up a bit. 300 for me is really handy for removing that sort of boxy sound. I also have another band here, which is on 80 Hertz, because I use 80 Hertz a lot. Sometimes I boost 80 Hertz if I want a little bit more sub, or I take out 80 Hertz if I don't want that sort of boomy low end. A super common one and really, really useful one is this harsh EQ cut, which I've turned off. This is just cutting at 40 Hertz at a really steep slope to take down that really sub low end that I can then move up if I like. And I also have 2 on this side, which are a high shelf, which is going down already and taking out that like harsh high end. I also have a high cut, which is sort of more a gentle slope, which I use all the time as well. So getting it exactly how you like it, and then right clicking and saving as the default preset. This will just save you so much time. So please do save some default presets. Whilst I'm at it, I may as well say this: the compressor default in Ableton has the makeup gain turned on, so I really recommend turning that makeup gain off and then saving this as the default preset. Another default thing that we can save is default sets. So let's say I wanted to save this whole set as a default, which it would be ridiculous because I'd have to load it up every time. So if you're in Ableton 10, all you'll need to do is go into the preferences and into the file and folder section, I'm pretty sure. But in Ableton 11, what you'll need to do is go into file up here and then save the current set as default set here. We can also save as templates in Ableton 11 because we have this template section over here, and templates are really, really useful. I have a hardware setup template that I use. I also have things like a band room, like a recording session templates. So I've got all of these tracks set up. They're all armed. They're all on the right inputs as well. So this is super handy for me, and I do use this. All right, well now let's get into how we can swap between arrangement and session view really seamlessly. And there's a whole bunch of things in session view that you can do that you can't do in arrangement view. And I do swap, when I'm in the loop stage, that is, I do swap between the views every now and then to just take advantage of some of the things in arrangement view. Let's say I wanted to transfer this section of the track that I've highlighted here into the session view. All I need to do is highlight, right click, and then click consolidate time to new scene. And that's going to bounce out all of the tracks in here and then paste them in these scenes. So if I was to click here, then it's going to play exactly what is in here seamlessly. It's really, really cool feature, which sounds the exact same as if I was to play it here. This is really great for if we are trying to bounce our arrangement into session view so we can play it live or play on my push. I do that a little bit on my push. We can also, it just allows us to jam out and sort of experiment with different things. And let's say I could have the drums from the intro playing with the synths from the peak, and I could mix and match these things in here, which is a really good way of trying to come up with some new ideas, or maybe a new B section for the second half of the track. Or I could arrange it so I could play it live. Or I could even take advantage of things like follow actions and things that you can't actually do in arrangement view. There is just a whole bunch of really cool features in session view that you can take advantage of by using this really easy, simple trick. So one thing about Ableton is there's actually a whole bunch of hidden features within Ableton that they're called directors features. They're primarily for debugging or features they're experimenting with and maybe even considering putting into the software. It's made for the developers, but they've made it available for everyone as well. And this is one of the features here that I really love. And if I hit this button, it'll allow me to see all of the the plugins that I have on each of my instruments in the mixer section, just like in most other DAWs that Ableton doesn't have, but it's really handy to see this visually. And what you'll need to do for this, it's quite simple, but there is a little bit of file management stuff that you'll need to get into. If I go over to my desktop and I hit go, whilst holding down Option, you'll see this library here that is hidden will become available to click on. If I click on that and then go into Preferences, find Preferences, and then into Ableton, and if I go into the Ableton version that I'm using, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of TXT files here. And this Options.txt file is one that I've created. So what you'll need to do is create a TXT file, a blank TXT file, and name it Options.txt. And then you'll need to put it in this folder here. Just place this TXT file in here. And if you type in -show device slots with capitals on each word, then this function will be available next time you open Live. So again, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can put into this TXT file, which will create these hidden features within Live. If you're interested in exploring more of these hidden features, I'll leave a link in the description as to where you can get more information on that. But this is just one that I found really useful. So lastly, I thought I might just add, it's useful to put the Options.txt file in all of the versions of Live that you're using. So 11, 11.0.1, 11.0.2 as well. You can see the Options.txt file is here. But if I go to Live 10, there's no Options.txt file. So now I've got this new feature that's really cool, but wouldn't it be great if I had a keyboard shortcut for it? Well, if you're on Mac, you can actually create keyboard shortcuts for anything that's in this top bar here. So if I look in the top bar, you can actually see the device slots is shown up here, but it doesn't have a shortcut next to it. Same as the track delays, they don't have a shortcut either. And there's a lot of other things in here that don't have shortcuts. So whatever doesn't have a shortcut, we can make one pretty easily. It's actually really, really simple to do. So if I again go over to my desktop, I'm going to go to System Preferences and into the keyboard section, into the shortcuts section, and go into App Shortcuts, and then click this little plus here. And I'm going to go and select Ableton Live 11, the version that I'm using, and then just type in the menu title. So the menu title is the exact wording of the function that you want to create a shortcut for. So we saw the one that we wanted to create a shortcut for was device slots. And I'm going to create a shortcut. Let's go Option Command C and add that one. I also want to create a shortcut for track delay, and I'm going to make that Option Command V. Let's hope that those ones aren't taken already. And you don't even need to restart Ableton for this. You'll see that once you go up here, it'll say device slots, Option Command C, track delay, Option Command V, Option Command V, that bringing up the track delays down here, Option Command C, and that's bringing up these ones. So it's really cool how easily this works, and it really does work. It's so simple. So finally, I thought I'd show you the workflow behind me setting up a mixing session. So when I'm producing my music, I produce it in one session, and then I actually mix in another session. I don't bounce all of the stems out. I just keep the stems as they are. I keep everything as they are, but I save it as a new session and set it up to be a mixing session so I can just think about the mix. So first thing I do when I'm setting up my mixing session is make sure everything is labeled and colored correctly. I have a particular color code that I use for everything, and that's black for the drums. So there's a few things in here that aren't colored properly. I'm also going to take off these labels off all the clips, which I don't really like. If I highlight them and hit Command R and space, and click off, you can see that it takes off all the labels, which is really cool. I'm going to label these few things here: crash, perk, symbol, open hat 2. I'm just going to delete any unused audio tracks, so I can delete this one as well. I can even ungroup this because I only have one track and call this the bass. And then I'm just going to go through and label and color everything and make sure it's all as I like it. And finally, take off the names from all of these. And now I can breathe again. Everything looks nice and it's simply laid out, which is nice. This is step one of setting up my mixing session. So what I'll do next is set up my locators. So here there's a rogue locator from when I was producing. I'm just going to delete that. If there's any others, delete them, and actually just set up one start and one end locator. And what I'm going to do in the start and end locators, and I'll explain why I just have the start and end locators in a second, is actually going to zoom in all the way. And it's a common thing in electronic music that if your track starts exactly on the first kick drum, then the transient of the first kick drum is sometimes chopped off when you export it. So I'm just going to bring this back just a tiny bit. Not anything that you'd notice, but now when I export, it's not going to chop off that first transient. And I'm also going to go to the end and find where the reverb tail or the last hit ends and put my end marker there as well. So this has a little bit of delay on it. So let's see where that delay ends. Ends right here. So I'm just going to put my marker maybe like there. And that way it has enough room for the start and the end. And what this allows me to do once I have this set up is if I right click the start marker, there's an option here for me to select to next locator. And this makes it really easy to export because I'm exporting and I don't have to zoom all the way in here and find like a sample right before the first kick drum and go and find if I was just to highlight here to here, it wouldn't leave space for that first kick drum. It wouldn't leave space for that reverb tail at the end. So setting up these really specific locators just allows me to export really easily. So now once I have the start and end locators set up, I'll start creating premix references. And what this is what I'll do is I'll actually bounce out the whole premix and then bring it back into my session. So I've just bounced out my premix now and I've dragged it back into my session. And so this is the exact same as this. And what I'm going to do is turn this track off and then color it something that's sort of indiscrete gray and then assign this track color. And then I'm just going to call this premix reference and assign this to a key mapping. So once I have this assigned to a key, let's say my one key on my numeric keypad, I can just easily swap back and forth between listening to the premix and the actual track mix down that I'm working on. So I've made a few adjustments here, but so you can see how the click of a button can really change and just make sure that you're actually making adjustments in the mix that are sounding good. We want to move the mix in the right direction. It's really easy to mix and then lose track of what the original thing was sounding like, and in the end, the original thing may sound better. So always referencing the premix is a really good way of doing this. But not only just the premix, I also bounce out a drums mix and a bass low end mix. So it's usually like the kick, maybe the snare and the bass, and reference how the low end was sounding in the premix. And I'll make a few different reference tracks and I'll bring them in and key map all of them. So now I've pulled them all in and I've got my low end at the top, my drums and my premix, and I'm just going to map them to different keys as well. So I'm going to have the one key triggering the low end, the 2 on the drums, and the 3 triggering the premix solo buttons. And that just allows me, to swap between the low end, the premix, and the drums of the pre-mixed track before I got into the mixing stage, just to always be referencing back and forth and make sure we're making adjustments that we want to be making in the mixdown. So here's the drums. Here's the low end, and then that's the premix. And so it's really easy to swap between all of these things really quickly and always, Finally, it's also really good to have a different track as your reference something that isn't a track that is a professional sounding track that you know and you trust, sounds good, so that you can always reference back and forth, make sure the kick drum is kind of feeling like that one, or it's a good way of knowing whether you have too much kick drum or whether you need a bit more low end, how's the brightness of this track compared to yours, and how does it all sit. So it's really good to have a professional track that isn't your own that you can use as a reference. Just drag it into the DAW and do the same thing. If you can set up your Command K key mapping to the solo switch, and then you can just hit the solo button whenever you want and just have a listen to that. It also just gives your ears a break and allows you to be a little bit less biased when you're making mixing decisions after you've listened to something else for a little bit. And finally, the last workflow thing that I'll do when I'm setting up my mixing sessions is actually just go to the master track, and you'll see that in this case, I already have them set up here. But what these are is I've key mapped these utility devices to turn on with the buttons 8 and 9 on my keyboard. And what that does is when I hit 8, it turns the whole track it monos the whole track and makes it just mono, so I can hear the mono compatibility when I'm mixing. I can always just hit 8 and listen to the track in mono, and I hit 9 and I can just listen to the sides. So let's have a listen to the sides. This is what it sounds like. So those are the sides, and then I can hear the track in mono and then go stereo, and I can sort of swap between them all really easily. The only thing is it's really easy to forget that you have the mono switch on, so just make sure that you check every now and then that the mono switch isn't on, or if you're trying to pan something and it's not happening, that's probably why. So having these things on your master that are key mapped is just a really easy way to check that mono and sides compatibility. So yeah, this is how I set up my mixing sessions so I can work really efficiently and without many distractions. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you picked up some useful workflow tips that you can go away and now implement into your own sessions and just make the whole process a bit more efficient and fun. Please do feel free to share your own workflow tips in the comments, as I know there's so many that I haven't covered. And remember as well to leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed the video today. But anyway, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.